Hey, Kerry, welcome to When Spirit Talks.
Thank you so much. I've been looking forward to this. I can't wait till we dive into and really talk about things that matter.
I know. I feel like it's a really important topic that we're going to be discussing today. I think a lot of women are going to find like nuggets of information here. And before we start, I want to know more about your story and how you became a life coach.
Well, I grew up in a family that from the outside, it looked like the perfect picket white fence, churchgoers, all of that. But my father was an abusive alcoholic. He was successful in business, but he had the rages. So at an early age, I didn't learn what love is. For me, love was getting into survival mode. It was hiding. It was overdoing things, people pleasing, learning that, okay, if I try to make him happy, maybe he's not going to explode, right? And one thing I don't think we talk enough about in life is generational trauma. And what I learned in my sister and brother, because we all, even though we played different roles, somebody was a scapegoat and golden child, and somebody could have been the black sheep. And even though the roles changed, we all were traumatized by, our dad. And unfortunately, that what I learned when I got into relationships over and over, I was in toxic relationships, dating the football quarterback, but he was abusive, pushed me around. He would talk me down, talk at me. And, that was back in the early 80s. And we didn't have the knowledge from some incredible doctors like Dr. Romney of educating ourselves on the narcissistic behavior and what it's like to be the victim in it. Not like using the victim words because we're
Mhm.
way stronger than a victim, right? Let's just use the word target. And so when we learn that in love, we repeat our patterns over in life, over and over and over until we learn our lesson, until we learn the truth, or until we learn that we aren't knocked down. So that's why I became a life coach. I've had interesting career paths, but now is my passion because I've finally seen the light. I've learned, I've stepped out of it. Understand the awareness and the truth. I've broken the trauma bonds. I've learned to self validate, find internal peace, spiritually, let that guide me too at times. I can go to nature and that guides me a lot. But it's just so important that we understand what we experience in our past can create our future if we don't break that. So
Mm.
that's kind of how I got here. I mean, but I was always, even as a child, very extremely empathic. It had a lot of sensitivity, which I didn't really understand how to, what's a good word for it, for sensitivity, how to really, it's really a treasure. But until we understand sensitivity, it can beat us up because we don't learn how to control or set boundaries. So I was always that. I was a peer counselor in high school, always had a really strong gift of listening, understanding. And as an empath, even as a kid, I could feel people's pain. And even today, if I really am connected with somebody, I feel it and it hurts. And I can cry from it, but I'm not crying for me. I'm crying because I feel the pain. I worked in women's, you know, shelters, abuse shelters in New York City. And it's just I've always been a helper. And I've always been called to do that no matter where I've been and no matter what career. And so when COVID hit, that's when I got my certification, and just said, this is what I need to do now in life.
That's amazing. So, what helped you make that, like, cut that cord where you were in these relationships that were toxic? What actually helped you move beyond that? Because it's so hard when you're in those situations
Yeah.
to move to move beyond that, or it's just so scary. So how did you do that?
Unfortunately, sometimes we have to hit rock bottom until we are able to put ourselves first, right? And it's really losing yourself, even though to others, nobody from the outside would know how lost I was feeling because I was always PTA president. I was always doing this. I was always running my kids. And and that's almost a trauma response of being go, 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 do, do, do. And with friends, with my girlfriends, I could be happy go lucky and do that. But in my emotional relationships, with myself and losing myself, and in my romantic relationships, I had no existence that was appreciated, valued. And when that happens, it makes you really start self doubt. So I think it really comes to a time that it's like, who am I? Right. And not having that inner peace. And because I was so unhappy, I was always an athlete. I lost myself. I gained like 65 pounds. I wasn't running marathons. I wasn't doing it. And internally, I knew I was like a functional depression. Right. And I knew I was just at a point in life that I'm not giving myself up anymore. I'm going to bounce back. I've always been resilient. I've gotten through a lot of childhood trauma, and I'm just it's not going to be that. And I think it was also really finding myself and being in tuned, but also allowing space for my angels to guide me. My every, anything of connecting God, the universe, and really allowing space to let go of what's hurting me, no, doesn't belong to me, and allow in the goodness of life because it's there.
Yeah.
We all have it. We just got to believe it and allow it in. And and I went through a lot of work. I mean, one thing that's beautiful is nowadays I educated myself because, someone like Dr. Romney has done 20 years on abuse and really focus on what happens to us that have been abused, right? And understanding from physically, we have things that happen in our brain, our amygdala that is created to be fearful, right? Of, back in primitive times, oh God, there's a tiger, or something coming at me, to be fearful. It was created for that. But when you've been in trauma over and over and you're in survival mode, it overtakes your frontal lobe, which you lose your reasoning, and it makes you really struggle in survival mode. So getting into educating, being fully responsible for my healing, that's what we need to. It's not anybody's fault of it's my responsible. What I'm responsible for my own healing. What I went through wasn't fair, but I went through it and I need to learn from it, right? What can I learn? Because there's patterns that one thing that was huge, there was patterns I was doing of when I would date people from high school, 20s, 30s, right? That I was doing that was wrong. Always agreeing, always, people pleasing, always worried about if they're happy. And when you start doing that and somebody has some narcissistic traits, holy cow, that's a bad pattern to go down because I am sacrificing all of my happiness to make somebody else happy. And that person that has those traits, they're never going to be happy. It's just that's a fact. So, really coming into the awareness, my patterns, understanding those personal traits of that type of person with strong narcissistic tendencies, and really start believing and letting go of self doubt. Those are all beginning steps.
There is so much to unpack there. I love
I mean, there's so
everything
much
you said
to
so much. So
unpack.
much. And I want to start off, I think, and if I can remember things, 'cause I'm one of those like things come to my mind and then I start talking
Yeah.
and I forget. But
Mhm.
I want to say it's amazing that you were able to get out of those patterns and cycles on your own because I feel like it's like what I've noticed it's one of two things. It's either like you get to your rock bottom and you're like, okay, I got to change, I got to do something. And at that point, you start moving. Or like for me, for example, I was in a relationship throughout high school, and this person was not physically abusive, but we were in such a toxic relationship. But I think a lot of that is due to age. We were young, right? But it was not healthy. There was cheating, there was everything, and I was very much that empath, just like you, where you just follow along and take the hits and keep going. And it was funny because I remember at one point when I found out about the cheating, broke up. I had broken up with him. And then a few months later, we got back together, right? And then it was so funny because thinking about it now, it was such a terrible relationship, but I think I would have stayed in it had he not broken up with me after that because then he met someone else at work. So it was the same pattern, but I think like I remember in those moments being like, oh my gosh, I would be with this person unhappy for the rest of my life because I just wasn't like strong enough to do anything about it. So had he not taken that step to break it off because he found someone else, I would have still been stuck there.
Mhm.
So it's one of those things. But fast forward a couple years later, I remember I got in a really short-lived relationship with someone. But what happened was I was older, I was wiser. I already had that experience of, okay, moving forward, I'm never getting back with someone who I broke up with. Like that was my boundary that I was setting for myself. And I remember noticing these little things popping up, these little patterns, and being like, uh-oh, this isn't good. And at that point, I was able to be like, I'm this old. I know my worth. I know this isn't good for me, and that's it. But I feel like it's so hard sometimes to get out of those situations, especially if you're like an empath and a people pleaser and you're so dependent on this love that most of the time you're not even getting, you know?
It's true. In these relationships, we aren't getting love, And what also happens is we hold on to false hope. If I try to have dinner ready on time, or if I try, to make sure the house is clean, he will be happy or she will be happy, right? If I try to fix it, and a lot of times, especially sensitive people, we want to help people. We want to give a second chance. We didn't get into these terrible relationships on purpose, right? We didn't be like, oh, I want a bad relationship. We want to get, we believe in people. And that's a lot of times someone that's a target in these toxic relationships. They're really golden hearted, beautiful people that want, to make the relationship work. But unfortunately, with somebody, especially when you can have mild, medium, or extreme toxic traits, it becomes where you're getting into the emotional abuse, the verbal abuse, the financial abuse, everything. And it becomes almost addictive, what we call trauma bonding. And that's where trauma bonding, you get the intermittent abuse where they can be nice one day and then next day you can't do anything or do triangulation where you can be in the room and you thought you'd be spoken to and they talk to everybody, but oh, go tell your mother that she could do this, and it's dismissive abuse or the silent treatment or they isolate you. Why would you want to go out with your girlfriends? Because they're more important than me. I thought you loved me. And so you start, or why do you want to be with your family? Aren't I? I'm your family. That I'm supposed to be more important, right? And so you start breaking off because it starts making you feel bad. It starts the blame, the guilt, the shame. And when you get into the shame, that's when we start abusing ourselves and we get into self doubt, losing our self worth. So this trauma bonding is really, really hard to break. It's quite interesting. There's been some doctors recently that even talk about breaking the trauma bond is even harder than a heroin addiction.
Mm.
Because what happens, we get the highs and the lows, the highs and the lows, we're getting endorphins released. And then we get where we feel a little depressed and we're holding on, clinging. That's how hard it is to break. But we can do it. We can break those chains bits by bits, breaking it, calling it out, becoming a like a mindset detective. What was that person's intention? To hurt me, to control me, to manipulate me. The more we can understand when they do things that hurt, what the intention, we can kind of break ourselves away from it a little, where we aren't taking it so personally. And then we understand, okay, that's their, abuse. That's their trying to get to us and break us down. And even calling out the love bombing, that love bombing, we can get sucked right into it. But what happens when we're in the the trauma bonding, it's almost kind of brainwashing where we get pulled in and we can also get that false hope. But he was so nice that other day that, well, maybe he's going to change that way or that, or maybe it could be a parent, maybe they're going to change that way that we hold on to that false hope. And that's what can make it really hard.
Mm.
So, when I work with a client, it's really important to become aware of the truth. And becoming aware of the truth is really a fact. Like if it was raining outside, we'd all agree how much it's raining. However, how hard it's raining, we could have conflicting opinions because someone from Florida is not going to say that's a torrential downpour if
Hmm.
you're living in North Carolina where I'm at. But this is what, makes it really hard, and and learning, I'm going to go back a word that is so important, awareness, truth will lead us to acceptance. And we can get to acceptance, that's when we can fully embrace and really go into healing. Healing's hard. It's not easy. It's a lot of inner work, and it's okay if we have a bad day. It's okay if we feel like we took three steps, excuse me, backwards, and we feel horrible because sometimes we need to learn more. We're missing something, right? I mean, for me, what I learned and I never understood when I was younger, triggers would always feel so traumatic and so hurtful and so painful. But now I look at a trigger in a different perspective. It's our teachers. It's okay if we get triggered. It's okay if we feel bad, but what's it telling us? What part of us haven't we healed yet? Let's go deeper.
Hmm. I like how you were talking about awareness because I think awareness is everything. But let's say there's, right, a listener right now who is either dealing with, like you mentioned, a parent or a partner, and they're aware of what's going on, but
Mhm.
they don't know how to act on that. What would be your, like the first thing you would tell a client who would walk in and have that experience?
Well, let's get to awareness real quick. I think one thing
Yeah.
that's helpful is a lot of times with my clients, let's make a truth list, right? And we're going to use that. They isolated, they dismiss me, they make me feel bad all the time, they always tell me I'm not enough. And let's understand in that awareness which each means, right? Does that mean you're being devalued? Does that mean you're being discarded? Because when we can understand the process, then we can name it. It helps us detach. So we need to understand that first, because then we can really look at it like somebody that's having, you know, every situation is going to be different. And where everybody's at is at a different place, right? So somebody's struggling in trauma bonding, when you get triggered, sometimes you feel disoriented. I can't do anything. And what I always say, go to your truth list. This is the truth, which separates you from what you think that's going on in cognitive dissonance, right? We're getting conflicting messages. So let's do that first. And then let's look exactly what's happening. And we kind of break it down, right?
Mm.
So, give an example. In a trauma bond, you're having troubles breaking it, right? And so you get told you can't do anything. Why should I talk to you? It doesn't matter. And so right now, that you're getting like a dismissive comment, passive aggressive a little bit. So you're breaking that down. And then from that, we can go, okay, that belongs to that person, what they're doing. It doesn't belong to me. Because when we can name what's happening, it helps us break through. And what is the truth? And sometimes we have troubles when we're in these of saying I'm enough. And one thing that helps a lot is I always will say to somebody, who's someone that really loves you and that you love? And a lot of times they'll say a best friend. Let's just make up a name. I'm just going to say you. But
Hmm.
they say, my best friend Stephanie loves me so much. And I said, well, if I would talk to Stephanie and if I would say you're not enough, would she say that's true or not? And they burst out, oh my gosh, she would never say that's true. She says I'm the best and I'm the greatest. And then I say, well, listen to what you just said.
Yeah.
I said, you didn't even hesitate to think. It just bursted right out. That's what the truth is. What this person that's always trying to hurt you, that's none of that's true, right? And so we can take each situation of what they're going through and kind of break it down to figure out, and get to what the truth is. And, there's so many different levels, but that just shows like a little bit smaller example, of a daily thing that might be, thrown at somebody.
The truth list idea is great. And what I like about it is that, and I see this too, not with my clients with, the themes that you work around, but just everything else. It's like when things are in your body or in your head, you can't really see them clearly because your emotions are involved,
Exactly.
your traumas are involved. Like all of this stuff is like mixing it up. It's kind of like if you have like a cup of water and you have like mud in it, it's not clear. But then once you start like writing it out, getting it out of your body, and you can see black and white on paper exactly what is there, it really helps you understand things in a different way. And like you said, it kind of brings you outside of your body, and outside of your own like internal awareness to see like, okay, this is the truth. It's not like the cycles I'm replaying or like self-doubt I'm really holding on to. It's like what's on this paper. And the fact that you also ask like, what would someone you love say about you? I
Mhm.
do that all the time. And I actually only started doing it when I was a mom. So once I became a mom,
Oh, I
I'd
love
be like, yeah, I'd be like, you know, how do I want my daughter to feel? Or like if my daughter was in this position, in this situation that I'm currently in, what would I tell her? Or what would I do for her? How could I support her? And that's really how I should be supporting myself. So that's really cool how you help them lay it all out there.
And one thing you just mentioned, I love, and I'd love to talk about a little bit more, the body,
Mm,
right? And a lot of times, we got to tune in to our body first. Our body speaks so much before it even goes to our mind. And how does your body feel? What is your gut feeling telling you? Are you feeling exhausted? Has that person, do you feel drained afterwards? And that says so much, right? Um, when you're interacting with, let's say it's a partner, and they're being dismissive, belittling you, what's going on in your body first? Because what can happen is we can explode back. That could be a trauma response of screaming and yelling back because it's breaking us down so much we can't. But I'll say to the clients, when you start feeling that feeling, what's usually going on? And a lot of times I get sweaty palms, my
mm,
heart's, palpitating, my neck is, intense, I get stomach aches. So we can tune in as soon as our body is talking to us. Instead of being explosive, we can kind of take that pause. Pause is so important in
mm,
life. And be, you know what? I'm not going to interact in this right now. You're talking, meanly to me, and I'm not going to accept that. I'm going to go take a break. So we can take and we can stop that, or we can learn. I work with clients sometimes on how do we respond back, because that's something we can control. We can't control the other person, we can't make them do anything. But when we're dealing with someone with a lot of narcissistic traits, we can go into gray rocking, which is a lot of talking about the weather, kind of monotone voice, real simple, minimal adjectives. We can do that. We can, one thing I love that Dr. Romney says, soul distance. And that goes along with the gray rocking. We never let them truly in to what means so much to us or what hurts us, because they're going to use it against us,
mm,
right? And so that's protecting. That's, some people put themselves in a golden light for protection, but any type of protection, what works for you helps, right? So, but also learning on how we respond back. How do we give less? Or how do we call it out? We don't want to get in a fight, and you aren't going to be telling somebody, oh, you're narcissistic. That's the worst thing to do because they'll turn it on you. But you can say, I'm not going to be belittled. And when you talk to me nicely, we can do it again and we'll try it later. Right. Or I won't be spoken to this way. Do not raise your voice at me and, dismiss yourself. We can do that. And that's learning to set boundaries, but doing boundaries not by giving a list of 100 things they need to do. Dealing with someone with a lot of narcissistic traits is different than dealing with somebody in a healthy give and take relationship. And that's what's important to learn, because in a healthy relationship, we can do the give and take. And a narcissist dealing with someone with extreme narcissistic traits, they aren't going to see anything you say, but we can set boundaries.
Setting boundaries for yourself,
Yes,
especially because I feel like it almost gives you a sense of empowerment, like a
does.
strength when you actually verbalize, like, I'm not accepting this anymore. Like, this is not
Hmm.
okay for me, you know? So yeah, that's amazing. And how would you go about telling one of your clients if they start setting boundaries, how to move past the guilt or the shame after they set them? Like after they verbalize, I'm not accepting this. Well,
Uh,
what
guilt,
would they do?
yeah, guilt and shame is really, really hard and it hits. And let's talk about the difference first. Guilt, we feel guilty when we do an action. Let's say we didn't include somebody and it could be on purpose, not on purpose, and they got hurt. That's an action, right? And so we can correct that and apologize. I didn't mean to leave you out. That guilt is based off of an action. But what is so painful is shame is based on us. There's something wrong with me, right? I feel shameful. I feel helpless. I feel useless. I'm not enough. And that's when we take it personally. Guilt, a lot of times we can fix by correcting. Shame is such a personal attack. And a lot of times, it's important when we start learning to set boundaries. And I was horrible at it. I said yes to everything, even when I wanted to say no. Matter of fact, just to kind of make a joke out of it, when my kids were younger, my girlfriend got me a mug that says, it was something on the lines of, learn to say no.
Mhm.
You volunteer for everything, right? And it was so true because I just did that. That was a trauma response. But what we do is, I'll tell people once again, I go back, who's somebody you feel safe with, and I'll say start boundaries with them, and we'll first talk about, let's say I have a client, she feels safe with her mom, she knows her mom loves her, but she feels bad ever saying no, right? And I said, well, start learning to set boundaries with her because you feel safe, and start it with easy, something easier of, no, I don't want to go for a walk right now because, just real simple. And one thing we need to learn in boundaries, we don't need to over explain. If we've been living in survival mode, a lot of times we just try to justify, over explain. And that's a trauma, response also. So start first with that. And and when you start feeling guilty, ask yourself, is it something truly you should feel guilty about? Right? Because when we can challenge that, saying no because you're tired is not something you should feel guilty about, right? Or if you just are too exhausted to go for a walk, it's not something you should feel guilty. So sometimes we need to challenge it and work through that, right? It's those little steps help us. Um, when we're dealing with shame, it gets a little deeper because shame is something that we're really, really struggling with. So that's really first understanding and becoming aware. How many times are you feeling that you're not enough? I'm going to use that one because it's pretty common. And when they say something, how many times does it come? And once again, it's really becoming aware of how much it pops up. And then we work through that step by step. And we also will bring in affirmations. I know affirmations are used so much, but one thing I think is important, um, to understand is we need affirmations that we believe. And we can't just go, and this is a perfect example. Somebody that's been really heavy, you can't just go and really has shame about being heavy, let's say 100 pounds overweight. They have shame, they have guilt, they don't like themselves. They can't just go and say, I love my body, because that's not true. So, to really make affirmations work, and this goes in the study of neuroplasticity, is we got to do something we believe first. So, we can go into saying, do you believe I have a body? Right. And that's something with somebody struggling. I have a body. They believe it. They might not like their body, and we aren't getting to that. But we need to start working with affirmations to have it make more of an impact of our life of what we believe. And we can work with, I have a body. And then the next step might be, I have a body that I'm grateful for that allows me to breathe, right? So we're doing like little steps. And the more we can bring that in, the more we can start embracing it and believing in it.
That was great
That
the
was
way you
great the
broke
way
it
you broke
down.
it down.
I
Mm.
really,
It
really
helps.
enjoyed that. It does, yeah, it does help because I feel like it's true. For me, affirmations, the way I use it is because I would always, right, repeat a thought that was like worst case scenario, worrying. It would just always replay. So for me, it was almost as if I was using an affirmation to pause my brain from just repeating the same, low self-worth type of thing. And so it just allowed me to shift it. But you're right that it has to be something that you believe in. There has to be like some truth, some type of connection, for you to actually feel it internally.
Mm. And we can use affirmations in a different, I always love different perspectives.
Mhm.
For example, let's say you're going to go work out and you've broken up with somebody and he's going to be there, she's going to be there, and you are just dreading it. We can use affirmations for like a 2 minute being our own cheerleaders. I can do this. I can do this. I can walk in. I can do this. They aren't going to phase me. And that helps me a lot if I'm having that little, oh geez, that gut feeling that something's uncomfortable. That works for me too, and a different way of doing it, of just being my own cheerleader, which I think is important for us to do.
Yeah, very important. I feel the same. And what it does too for me energetically is it just like when you're repeating things that aren't super helpful, that bring you down, it's like you're on that wavelength where the energy is more of like a low vibrational energy, which makes you feel
Exactly.
lower. And when you start shifting to more empowering phrases, you are actually shifting and elevating that energy, which makes you feel better in the moment. But I think the more you do that,
Mhm.
the easier and the more you feel that way. Like, I think there's something to be said about the affirmations, but also using them consistently because I feel like to do it one day and then, you stop, it's kind of like, okay, you're going up and then you drop back. But if
Mhm.
you do it consistently, there's this feeling of like uplifting energy that you feel that helps you kind of navigate all of the challenging things that you're dealing with in life because life can be really, really challenging.
And I love that. I think an important word is a lot of times doing things with intention,
Mm,
and intention has been something I've really tried to focus on the past 2 years of, when I wake up in the morning, have an intention. Or even if my intention in the morning is just to have a few minutes of connecting with the universe, connecting with God, connecting spiritually, of doing my little prayer in the morning, that's still intention
yeah.
because it's allowing me to have space to let go and allow in what beautiful things I need for that day. And, so those are the intentions. For me, nature is my healing place always to go to. If I love my 2 hour walks in the woods.
Mm,
I love walking with girlfriends. However, if I know my soul needs a little cleansing, if I'm being a little overwhelmed, if I've allowed myself to get exhausted by others, and as I said, I've allowed it because I haven't protected myself enough, or I'm allowing people to do that to me. Sometimes I need those 2 hour walks, right? Where I put on music that kind of just gets me deep into, it's kind of like a meditation,
hmm.
but it lets me kind of be in a trance in my walks, and the colors become so much more vibrant. I guess some people would say nowadays fifth dimensional, the brighter colors. But sometimes, this is, I've done this different places testing it out because that's just my nature to test it out. But there's sometimes I feel a calling to video how beautiful And then I go back and look at it and I see little green orbs and I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
it's just the camera. And then I'll test it out in other areas. And I'm like, I'm just going to test it. I'm not getting that feeling. I'm like, well, I don't see any green things. And I'm like, maybe it's the way the sunlight is. I have to at least test it out just the way I am.
Mhm.
And but I get that. And I just feel such a calling. And one thing that comes to me on my walks, I always find feathers. Feathers
Mhm.
just come down to me everywhere. I have a really close girlfriend that's she's shamanic healer, and for her with feathers she uses them. And so sometimes when I do that and I just say let me have signs of feathers, I come back on walks at 12, 15 feathers. She just calls me the feather magnet. And it's not like I found them all in one place from that. It's just, and they're all different. They're all different birds, from the hawk to the owl to the bluebird to the cardinals to, I even get little, the jays. And I just collect them for her. And then there's some that she's like, you need to keep this one. And so I place by my bird feeders. I just have like little areas where I collect rocks where I'm walking, because that just feels me grounded. And I put that there. But for me, abundance, sometimes I'm even saying, okay, I don't need the abundance, I share, to give to the others. But sometimes when I feel like when I'm asking for a sign from the universe, God, Jesus, angels, all of that to me is kind of one. And when I feel like that, sometimes I get an abundance, but for me that's the sign. And
Yeah.
where, in people that are in toxic relationships, environment might not work for
Mhm.
everybody, because we're all different, but find what works for you. And I think it's so, all of us as individuals, we have our own way of connecting. Find your own way. There's not a wrong way in what works for you. But I'll tell you, I come back from my walks, and even sometimes on those walks, I'm not a big crier, because as a child pattern, I've learned to, couldn't show crying. But on those walks, sometimes I am just flowing with tears. Sorry, my ear now.
No, you're okay.
But that's just what I wanted to share, because I'm being vulnerable here, because not everybody
Yeah.
would be like, oh God, that's just crazy. But it's not. That's just, and this has just been my past 2 years of really
Yeah.
connecting with my walks. And I love, just want somebody to be able to embrace these moments for yourself too, because it's so beautiful.
Hmm. It's the small moments, and I'm just giving you a heads up. I bet you anything it's just going to continue to increase for you because that's usually how it starts. It'll be like little things and it'll keep growing. And I also have a feather box.
Oh, you do?
I do. I have a box full of feathers, and my husband thinks I'm nuts. Every time I bring a feather home, he's like rolling his eyes. It's like, wash it. But I do. I have this box of feathers that I just love. And everything you said, I am so down for. And
Hmm.
this leads us perfectly into the spirit segment. So there's 4 questions I ask every guest. So my first question is, what is one thing you always include in your daily routine that helps you stay grounded and balanced that might help others do the same?
Every morning I try, once in a while, if I wake up too tired, I might forget until later. But every morning I always try to put me in God's golden light from my head to my toe to see my tight. Yeah, always do my routine, help me become a stronger person, lead the way. I would love to help more people. Give me guidance for that. Tell my angel, I'm always very thankful
Mhm.
of everything I experience, but I'm also very open to help with guidance and for protection and to teach me. You know, I Each day is a little different, what I feel like I need to ask for, but I think it's really important to start your day off grateful and full of appreciation. But I am always here and always open to more guidance and to learn more. And that's what teach me more. What else
Mm,
do I have to learn for the rest of my life? Let me help other people heal. Let me become, a healer, more of a healer, if that's the path you want me to go down. So I do that a lot.
that's amazing.
And I
And
might do it different times a day. And some days, if I wait,
yeah.
as I said, some days I'm just like, oh, just go get me my coffee.
We all have those days. Me too. I always have a routine, but there's a day where like, I don't know, you're rushing out the door and you forget and it's not a big deal. But that's great. I love that. Gratitude is so important.
Uh,
And do you have a favorite story regarding your connection to spirit?
well, this is in the beginning when I first
Mhm.
started asking for feathers, being inspired from my girlfriend. And I had that day of abundance, and I was just like, wow. And and we were all a little bit skeptical, like, oh, okay, well, you have to do it. So then I'm talking to spirit, and I'm like, I just need something that is unexplainable
Yeah.
to really believe it. And I don't usually walk out of my front door, but this was the second day of abundance, and I was going to go for my walk, and I don't usually walk out the front door. And so I was getting ready, and I had my hand on the doorknob, and where my front door is, it just is a big wall, and then there's kind of like an open space that goes into a dining room, so there's nothing there. And then there's a mirror, and my stairways are not even close. It goes around, wraps around, so it's quite some distance of anything. There's no ledges, there's no nothing. And as I was opening up the door, and opened it, from my peripheral vision, about the size of 2 inches, something was going down. I was like, oh, geez, a bug. And I looked down on the floor, and it was a feather.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm like looking around, and I'm like, nobody's gonna believe this. I'm like looking at the ledge, and I'm like, but this is the day after, to give me something, give me a sign of something that is kind of not explainable. And I was just like, no way. And so then I spent a few minutes before going out the front door. I closed it, looked around, and I was like, there's not even a picture. It could have been. It couldn't have come from there. Where the heck did it come from? So
Tell me you saved
that's
that feather.
I did.
Okay,
That
good.
one's in my room.
Okay, good. That is
But
really
that
cool.
yeah, that was just like, it was kind of unexplainable.
Hmm.
And the other unexplainable time I had that I didn't understand, that I look back now has more meaning. When I was 16, I had a near-death experience where I was supposed to be dead on arrival to the hospital. I was on the back of a motorcycle with no helmet,
Mm.
wiped out around 60 miles per hour, cracked my head. And they basically told my parents that I didn't have a chance to live. From that time, I was in a hospital for about a month, but I recall very little now. And at that day, people would have thought I was crazy. But I had an out of body experience with it was probably an angel. I mean, that's what I would say, but it was with a very calm, relaxing, golden type light looking down at my body. And I knew it wasn't my time to go.
Can I just
Did
tell
you?
you, remember the confirmation that I
Yeah,
said earlier when we were talking about that mail
yeah,
coming through?
yeah.
I just got it. So yeah.
Okay, I just got goosebumps looking all around my body.
Yeah. So that's the connection. That's what it is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Amazing.
I mean, I'm
Wow.
just, oh my gosh, I'm just sticking up, and it's this what goosebumps is from my head to my toe.
Yeah.
But after that, I never had a fear of death. And it was a change
Amazing.
in my life because my parents were divorced, and my life
Hmm.
was kind of, my mom was never around. My dad, I didn't talk to for years. My dad didn't pay child support, my brother and sister out. So we lived upper middle class, but we lived at that time really poor. So where I lived was a lot of kids involved in drugs, it was kind of a rough area. And after that, I was saying no to kids for drugs, trying to get me on drugs. I don't do that stuff. I don't need that in my life. And that would have been like 16, to stand up to where
Hmm.
people knew I never had a parent at home. So I always at since then, I always know I had angel spirits all covering, watching me and giving me that gut feeling of don't do that, don't do that, because I never had parents around. I could have really ended up in a bad, bad path. I really could have.
100%. And my whole
Yeah.
back is like lighting
Mhm.
up. Yeah, they're all behind you, but I feel that and I
Mhm.
love how and like I said, it doesn't happen very often when they come through, but it's all making sense now.
Mhm.
And what is
Uh,
one final
Okay.
piece of advice you have for listeners trying to improve their spiritual well-being?
What helped me is learning to slow down, pause, and trust your gut feeling. I think what I never understood, because sometimes you hear people say, I hear voices, I see things. For me, it's just a strong feeling. And I never realized that was spirit talking to me, and really just trust it and believe in it. And when you ask, be open to listen and really learn from it and not block it out, because I think I really blocked it out for a lot of years.
Mm.
Um, I was always very, very intuitive, that when I went through things in middle school, my friends wouldn't understand, but then my best friend's mom, we'd stay up to 3 in the morning talking, when I was 12. So I've always had an intuitiveness that I never believed. And it's taken me into now to really understand where I'm at. And so if I gave any advice, believe, but allow it to be open and to feel. For me, a lot of it's feeling, people, we're
Yeah.
all different. How about you? I mean, would you,
I
any
would say
other?
the same. I think first of all, I love the word pause.
Mhm.
Specifically because I know there's probably a lot of people, including myself. I always felt like very like hyper vigilant, like I had to just something happened, I had to fix it, or I had to do this, or and it was so hard to pause and just wait. But I feel like as I've gotten older and I've gone through things, I noticed that the moments when I actually like paused and recognized like, okay, I don't have to do anything right now. I don't have to jump to things
Exactly.
because I feel like it's when like in those moments when you pause, it's kind of like you give your body a second to just calm down. Like
Hmm.
your nervous system calms down, and in that point is when you can actually like think of things from a place that isn't induced by panic. It's like you're coming from a place. Um, and spiritually, I agree too. It's like I don't, I mean, I wouldn't say I hear voices, but I guess like when I'm dealing with the mediumship aspect, I do hear voices, but I'm not one of those, people that
Hmm.
would say I hear random voices, but it's an inner dialogue. It's an inner feeling. It's all about like trusting yourself because I think spiritually and energetically, the communication isn't the way it is with humans. Like we talk, we use our voice. It
Exactly.
doesn't work that way. Like so yeah, it's about going within and really like trusting like the impulses you're getting, the really strong feelings you're getting, the sensations in your body that you're getting. And a lot of times, everyone has their own specific thing. Like, I get my confirmation in a very specific way. And it's
Mhm.
like, for me, it's these goosebumps, but they're not typical. Like, it's hard to describe. And I think that's the hard part is that when you're talking with people who are trying to explain things like this, it's like you can't even explain it. Even like people who, totally off topic, but like, let's say getting a session with me, right? Like, we're on Zoom, we're at a Zoom, and it's like you can't explain it, but you feel it. So, just like you said, like, you're trusting this feeling. Like, everyone has their own feeling and it's about trusting that. So 100% agreed.
And I always like, for me, this summer, my connections are birds and butterflies.
Mm.
I just feel like it's birds and I see butterflies everywhere.
Well, that's a
It's just,
transformation symbol. So you're
oh, is
probably
it?
undergoing, yeah. And remember I said, I think it was in the beginning, there's this connection, like this intuitive piece, right? With you and the black clothing, subconsciously,
Mhm.
energetically, and then like I feel like it's just going to be the beginning for you, is what I feel. And that could be the transformation energy showing up with the butterflies and the birds,
Oh,
just the,
oh, yeah. I mean, I've always loved birds. I mean, birds
hmm
has always had my aunt was really into birds, and she'd have cardinals come to her
hmm
window, and they would wait, and then we would put a couple peanuts out and the cardinals would be there. And so that was something, I think, since I was a kid. My mother was a big bird watcher, and so birds have always been, I love any animal. I'm just a big
hmm
animal person. But this summer has been huge birds and butterflies. Like I'll go on a walk and I start counting. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm on, 16, 20 butterflies in one walk, but they're beautiful. I mean, big, like just beautiful yellow. And then I've been, lately, it's been a lot of black with vibrant, like the color of my shirt, vibrant blues.
I have so much to say about this when we get to your card.
But that's, I mean, it was funny in the beginning, like June, it was just yellow butterflies everywhere. And now it's a lot of black
Yeah.
with, it's cute. Yeah, I love it.
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited to share what's coming up. And the final question is, where can our listeners go to learn more about you?
You can find me on Instagram, which is at Kerry Life Coach. I have a website, which is my full name, Kerry Rasenberger, .com. I'm on TikTok, LinkedIn. They could do that. And also, if you go to if they have a question ever, and DM me on Instagram, or you can send me an email through my website. And I would love, to help anybody in need. If somebody wants a free money session, I don't mind doing them.
Oh, that's beautiful. Amazing. Okay, we're at the point where I'm sharing your card. And
Oh, I love it. I can't
and
wait.
I am just going into there's so much stuff. I hope I can remember everything, but you got the Fool. So there's so much I have to say about this, okay? So
Wait, what's the picture?
can you see it? The Fool.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Okay. Yeah.
there's, if anyone's not watching but listening, there's feet at the bottom. There's a
Uh,
rock ledge. There
oh,
is just gray. You can't see the path clearly ahead, but do you see the rainbows?
oh, yes. I
So
love it.
it reminded me of you on your walks when you're
Mhm.
going through and you were feeling that like 5D, all these beautiful colors, just like starting out on this journey connected to nature. But the other thing that was sticking out is first of all, this was outside of what I'm going to say after, but initially it was like about you and this journey that you've had to like learn how to love yourself, how to accept kindness, um, and how you help other women start this new journey into, overcoming all of those traumas and relationships. But noticing the rainbows in the front. So it's not about like taking this leap to a new journey where you're full of fear. It's about taking the leap on this new journey that is going to bring you more peace and happiness. But now I'm tying in the butterflies and the transformation. So
Mhm.
yeah, this is just going and really confirming what I was feeling about you starting out on this new journey. And I think it's going to be tied into a lot of the spiritual piece. I think you're going to be getting a lot more intuitive signs. I think you're going to be connecting to nature and like that intuitive part yourself. But this is all about new journey. So I think, yes, you've
Love it.
had these new journeys in your past, but I think specifically this is like a current future card for you. I think it's a current future journey.
Yeah, I agree with you. I
Yeah.
feel that I'm at the beginning of some really good inner peace.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of work. I've done a lot of healing. I've done a lot of letting go of hurt. But I'm also more open, spiritually. So I can't wait to see what comes.
That's what it is. And it's funny because like we've been friends on Instagram, but we never
Mhm.
actually like
I
talked.
know.
And so when I pull the cards, I always have like this intuitive thing that comes up. But then as we talk, I'm like, no, this is coming in and this is coming in. But yeah, there is a relation to your past in you starting the journeys that you started, but this is totally a present future
Mhm.
journey that's showing up for you. So that's really cool.
I love it. I can't wait. I'm so excited.
Yay. And the message for everyone else, so if you're listening, this is the message collectively for you. If I'm getting spirit coming through right now. Okay, sorry, totally threw me off
Okay.
track. So, if you are starting a new journey, there's a spirit, a male spirit, similar to
Mhm.
the one that showed up for you, Kerry, but a personal spirit for those of you who are listening who this resonates with. There is a male in spirit going to help you through a new journey that you're taking. Okay, so there's going to be a new journey that you're going to embark on.
Mhm.
And what they're saying is don't let fear hold you back from taking the step. Don't let fear hold you back from starting something new because sometimes new things can be scary. It's more like there's a reassurance around you that this new journey is going to be a new chapter for you. So
Okay. Love that.
amazing. And thank you so much for coming on. It was so lovely to chat.
Thanks so much for having me. I love it. I just want to talk to you all the
I
time.
know we could talk forever.
I know. I could just talk for hours with you. Thank you so much for your time.